Afternoon. So welcome back to another Q&A session. Apologies for the slightly delayed start. Been waiting for the plumber all morning and he's just arrived just as I was literally about to go live. But yeah, we should be uninterrupted from now. So the first thing that we're going to cover today is about grip strength. So apologies for last week. I did have a few technical issues when my computer froze. And I was going to cover grip strength because we've been talking about using straps for deadlift, and that was going to lead on to how could we actually improve grip strength. So we'll cover that a little bit, and then we'll talk about testing grip strength, other measures of strength or other tests we could do to measure strength gains. And then I had a question about working out if you have a new ache or pain and if it's a good idea or whether we should rest. And then there's going to be any other questions that you ask me live on this call or on this live stream. So do take this opportunity. If you have any questions regarding working out or starting a strength training program as an older adult and you're just not sure and you want to clarify anything before you get started, or if you've started and you've got a few sticking points, then I'll be more than happy to answer those live if I can. If there's any questions I'm not 100% sure about and I need to do a little bit of research on, then I will do that too. So I know if Maggie, if you're watching live, you sent in a question about working out fasted or working out having eaten anything. And whilst I've got a few thoughts on it, I'm going to do a bit more research because as a physiotherapist, I'm not a nutritionist, so I always have to be a little bit sort of careful on how detailed advice I go on to the nutrition side of things. So if you are watching Maggie, I will come back to that next week when I've done a bit more research on that and a few kind of resources I can point you towards. But yeah, for anyone else, if you've got any questions live as we're going through, do ask them using the chat feature on YouTube or the comments feature on Facebook. And if you're watching this as a recording rather than live, then again, do use the comments. I will check them each evening, and then I'll add those onto my list of questions for future live Q&As, which are always Wednesdays at 12 o'clock. Now, if you do find you have had any value from any of these videos, there's only one thing I ask is if you can click the thumbs up button underneath the video to like it. It does help the video get sent out to more people, and the more people who find it, between us we can try and help more people get started with their strength training journey. So let's come on to that then. So the first question we had was about grip strength then. And as I mentioned last week, we talked a little bit about deadlifts and grip strength failing before the muscles you're actually trying to target, and the benefits of using straps for that. But the fact the grip was failing in the first place is a sign that we should probably try and do some work to build the grip strength. So just like any other muscle, if we're trying to build strength in a group of muscles or in an individual muscle, we need to try and push that muscle to the point of fatigue. So with grip strength, if we're trying to challenge that grip strength, we do need to push the muscle to fatigue in order for it to improve. Now, there's countless variations of different exercises and different devices you can get, and I'm just going to give an idea of a few things you could do with things you're probably already going to have in around the gym that you can use to improve some grip strength. But you can also get some devices that you kind of squeeze them, they're kind of spring-loaded grips. You can get some elasticated type things that you can do different kind of grip strength, because we've got different types of grip. So we've got kind of the grip that way, we've got a bit more this way, we've got the grip here, we've got pinch grip. They all utilize slightly different muscles in slightly different ways. So the more ways that we can work on the grip strength there, the better that is likely to be, or the more kind of well-rounded our grip is going to be. So the first thing we can look at is the exercises where our grip is already going to fatigue in, say, a deadlift. If that's you're one of the people where your grip gives up before your legs do, then we can almost use that as a bit of an exercise in itself. So you could do some where you might use the straps to really push your deadlift to target the muscles we're trying to target in the glutes, the hamstrings and the back. But every now and then it's good to then take the straps back off again and then do deadlifts so that your muscle strength in your grip goes to fatigue. because it will gradually build and get stronger as you do that. So that is one way straight away. Generally, any exercise where you're holding a weight or a dumbbell down by your side is going to be starting to challenge the grip. And there's a few things you can do, like farmer's walk, where you're carrying 2 dumbbells, one in each hand, by your side, and you're walking along the length of the gym and then back again. And if we can start to pick a weight that is heavy enough, it will eventually start to work. When you find your grip will start to give out a little bit, and that is one that we can work on. So you sort of push in the grip to fatigue with your farmer's walk, or you can do single arm and do suitcase carries. You can also adapt how you do those farmer's walks, and you could do it as a farmer's walk, or you could just stand there and just wait till fatigue. But again, I'm going to improvise. Like if this is a weight plate, I can come and hold the weight plate in that kind of pinch grip. Just come that way, and I can have that down by my side, and then I can walk the length of the gym there. You could also have 2 small weight plates next to each other, so you're kind of holding them together, and they want to slide, so you're having to kind of maintain the grip a little bit more from there. The other one you could do is, again, improvising. If this was the top end of a dumbbell, so that it's kind of sitting on its end, I could take my hand and grip the dumbbell here, and then again have it down by my side, and I could then walk the length of the gym back, or could just stand there and try and grip it until I feel like it's about to fatigue. And obviously with these, you just be careful of your toes. If you feel like your grip is about to go, then just stop and you can sort of make sure it's not going to land on anything, basically. But yeah, then we're starting to get that grip, we're starting to get this grip. In terms of kind of this grip, you can get finger rolls on either a dumbbell or a barbell, and what we can do is you can hold the bar there, so the weight, and again I'll do this sort of down by my side, but I can allow the weight to open up my fingers, so I've still got some grip on it, and then come back up again, grip, come back up, and that's a really nice way to work that grip there. Other ideas, one that I really enjoy doing, and I get people doing all the time in the gym, is using a kettlebell. So you've got the bell and then the handle, but what I do is actually turn it on its head. So you get someone holding the handle with the kettlebell and the weight up here, and then what wants to happen is it wants to fall to one side or the other, and you're having to really grip to stop that happening. So you can then grip it, and then you could do some shoulder press, you could lay on your back and do chest press. You want to be careful it doesn't fall towards the direction of your head, is the only thing just to be careful of. So some people, as I do, I kind of guide with the other hand just in case I need to catch it. But that's a really nice grip exercise there. I've put a document below, or a link to a blog post below that comes from Nerd Fitness, and they've got a really nice blog post with a video in there of some grip strength ideas. So do check that out if you want some ideas for grip strength. But whilst it's not one of the first things I jump to in terms of creating a program, a lot of people find that it is a limiting factor at some point. So it's definitely worth working on your grip strength at some point. Which kind of brings me on to the next point about measuring grip strength and why that could be important, because they've actually found it's fairly well documented that if the worse our grip strength is, the more chance there is of a slightly earlier death than those with better grip strength tends to live longer than those that have a worse grip strength. How do you know whether your grip strength is good, average, or below average? And the only way you really know is through testing. And you can actually, with grip strength, do that quite easily and affordably from home. So one of the things I picked up there is this grip strength dynamometer, or handheld dynamometer, and it does basically what it says, it measures grip strength. So if I turn that on there, so you can get these electronic ones, or you can also get some sort of analog ones that as you squeeze, it kind of pushes the dial round, and then it gives you the value that you're after. This one's quite nice. It kind of gives you you're able to, if I test there and I squeeze, it gives a value and then you come back off again. So ideally what we'd do is actually, I could reset that, holding it kind of down so that my elbow's at a 90-degree angle in front of me, and then you squeeze hard as you can and then relax, and then you can normally, if it's on this one, yeah, you can either set it in pounds or kilograms. And then what I've done is in the description below, I've put a link to a post that's got the normative values. So what that means, it's got the values for your age group, for your gender, and I think it separates it out into non-dominant and dominant hands as well. And that is going to help you determine whether your grip strength is weak, normal, or strong. And sometimes it can be quite surprising that what you thought you might be strong, you might fall just into that category of again, it's not necessarily weak, but it's not as strong as you could be. But because it's not as strong as you could be, again, that could be an indicator it definitely needs working on, because we know that weak grip strength tends to lead to some of the other conditions, or can be associated with other conditions that can lead to early mortality. So I would say with grip strength, wouldn't just do a one-off reading. I would take a few readings and then take an average, but give time in between each attempt, just to allow the muscles to regain in the same way as you're doing sets of an exercise. You have a gap in between before you then go into a second set. But again, there's more details in that article on assessing grip strength. But I think that's a really important and really good thing to do. And like I say, there is a link below to where you can find this exact grip strength dynamometer on Amazon. Just to be completely transparent, that is a Amazon affiliate link. So if you do make a purchase through that link for that grip strength dynamometer, I do get a small percentage at no extra cost to yourself. But just so you're aware. But that then just brings me on to the next question, and I've kind of put it down as a question as how can I tell if I'm getting stronger, is what other tests can you do to assess whether you are improving in the gym, other than just seeing the weight that you're using improving and increasing? Is that carrying over into things that we do day to day, and are your muscles actually getting stronger? Now, if we did want to actually assess the strength of the muscles, we generally have to use other alternatives to something like this, because the true measure of strength is what is the biggest force your muscle can produce. And you generally have to push against something that can give you a reading of how much force you are producing. The other tests that I'm about to go through aren't quite specifically strength, but they're a good indication that you're getting stronger. So just a kind of a slight caveat there, because the dynamometers that you can get some handheld ones that assess, if you position them, you can push into it, you can kick forwards to see what your quads are doing, you could have your hand at the side and push inwards, but they're generally not quite as accurate as the hand grip ones, because if you're pushing against something and someone else is pushing to create the resistance and they're not pushing quite hard, it's sometimes a little bit harder to get in an accurate reading there. So these other tests are just a better indication, plus those devices are a lot more expensive. So in the online course that I've got, Stronger for Life, I have a module on baseline tests that you could do to see if you're getting stronger. So I'll go through a couple of those now. There are more out there that you could do, but this one's a good sort of 3 or 4 options there. So we've already gone through the grip strength, which is one that I recommend that people do in there. The next one is a 30-second sit to stand test. So what you're basically going to do is take a dining room chair that is kind of standard height. In the linked article below, they do use a chair that they use a standardized height of 17 inches. Now, if you're comparing your improvement, as long as you're using the same chair you used in that first time to the next time, and I recommend in the online course that you're doing it every 6 weeks, So it's not too frequent, but frequent enough that you can see the progression happening. As long as you use the same chair for you, you've standardized it for you. In the document, it also gives normative values again of how many repetitions of sitting to stand someone gets in 30 seconds, and if that is average, below average, above average, etc. And if you want to kind of have a good confidence that you compare fairly with those normative values, then as close to 17 inches is going to be, you're going to want to have the chair that is about as close to 17 inches there. But basically what you're going to do is set a 30-second timer, and you're going to stand up so you get full extension, sit down so your bum touches or makes contact with the chair, and then come back up again. So you don't have to kind of fully commit to sitting down, but as long as you squatted low enough for your bum to touch a chair and come back up again, that counts as a repetition. And it's how many repetitions can you do in that 30 seconds. And that gives you a good indication. And again, you can compare yourself to yourself in 6 weeks, another 6 weeks, and you should be able to see that score is improving the stronger you get with the gym exercises that you're doing. The next one is a really nice test, but it's quite difficult as well to do it perfectly, but it's called the sit-rise test. So I'll use this image to help. This is taken from, I think it's Discover Weekly magazine, but the link to their article is below, and it goes through the test in a lot more detail. The test is basically, can you get from standing to sitting on the floor and back to standing with as few points of contact as possible? So ideally, the way this woman's done it, she's got down to the floor and she's got back up again, and she hasn't used her hands at any point. So that means that she would have scored a score of 0. So the lower the score, the better. They then have a scoring system that for every point of contact you make on the way down and then again on the way back up, you get a point. So whether you use your hand there, your knee on the floor, you put your forearm on the floor, you put your hand on your knee, or you put the side of your leg on the floor, they all count as a point each, and that's again for the way down and the way back up. So the higher the score you get, and there's also a half a point for if you manage to get up without using your hands but you were off balance, you would get a score of a half point there. The higher score you get, the worse it is, the lower the better. And just like grip strength, they found that there's a good link to the lower score you get, the longer your life is likely to be, the worse the score you have, the earlier mortality is likely to be. So it's a good test to do. What I would say is, if you're not confident with this and you don't feel safe doing it, don't go straight for, let's see if I can get down to the floor and back up again without using my hands. Do it as, how would I normally do it? How many points of contact was that? Okay, well, let's see, can I just do the same thing, but can I just remove 1 point of contact? And if that went well, okay, well, can I remove another point of contact? And then you're sort of slowly kind of progressing to the point where you're trying to get eventually to the point of doing it without hands, rather than let's try and do it without hands, finding you lose your balance and fall over, and the last thing we want to do is cause yourself an injury doing this. So yeah, take it from the other side, see what your natural would be and what your natural score would be, and then see what changes you can make to improve that. But again, monitoring that every 6 weeks or so is a nice thing to do to see whether the strength training you're doing, the new program you're doing in the gym or at home, is carrying over into building some of the scores here. As another side note, someone who is on the online course, she said she'd seen this go round on social media, and it's gone round a few times, and I remember the first time was probably about close to 10 years ago now. I think Angela Rippon did a program on how to stay young, and they covered this test. And I remember working in the physio clinic, and about 3 or 4 patients started showing me, and I hadn't seen the program at this point, and yeah, it's because it was so mainstream there. But anyway, it's come around a few times, and she found that at the time it went round on social media, she didn't even try it because she just assumed that she wouldn't be able to do it. And then because it was on the online course, and I'd sort of suggested that we try this as every 6 weeks, she gave it a go. And although it wasn't a score of 0, I think she only scored 1. And she was shocked that she had been able to achieve it. And she then started to open up that mindset. Well, if I've told myself I couldn't do that and I could do it, what else have I told myself I couldn't do? and that actually gave her a bit more freedom, and she felt a lot more confident in the gym to try new things that she'd kind of ruled out. So yeah, worth looking at that. And yeah, Kim's just said there, I do this every day. So yeah, it's definitely worth doing. And if you're ever on the floor, is trying to get up, even if you're not doing it, this is a test, but if you're ever down on the floor, if you've got grandkids and you've been playing with them, challenge yourself. How can you get up without using as few points of contact? And the more you do it as a kind of build it into a bit of a daily routine, it does improve it, as well as the stuff you're doing in the gym. Good. So they're kind of the main ones for the test. But the other thing you can do as a test of if your strength is improving, there may be some size improving of your muscles or some definition as well. So sometimes I have it as an optional extra in the online course of whether people want to take a photo from the front, the side, and the back, and then you can use measurements and add that to it, where you take the circumference of, say, biceps, you could do chest, your waist, around your hips and your glutes, and around the widest point of your thigh, and you might be able to see that your muscles are just increasing slightly in size, and the aesthetics from the photo, you feel happy with how you look, and that's another kind of motivating thing that's going to make you want to continue. Because sometimes if you just took weight whilst you're building some muscle mass, although you might be losing body fat, they might counter each other out, and it might feel like nothing's changing if you just look to weight alone. And I listened to a nice book actually that made me think of covering all of these today. And it's based on something around marketing, and completely unrelated to this, but it talked about the fact that the more you measure, the more chance you have of winning, and the more you win, the more motivating it is, and the more it's going to push you to want to continue. And whilst there's a part of me that from a physio and a scientific point of view, that's not how we should work in terms of kind of scientific experiments. You generally want to look at one thing. Does it meet your hypothesis, or does it prove it or disprove it? And then you can kind of move on from there. If you start measuring 10 things and something improves, the more things you look to measure, the more by chance one of them is going to improve. So from a scientific point of view, it's not great. But yeah, in terms of psychology, the more we measure, the more tests we do. And then if we do, say, 6 or 7 tests and we see that 3 of them are improving, we can focus on those 3, see that they've improved, and can see it's worth doing what we're doing, even though the others haven't improved yet. And that motivates you to continue. Whereas if you only did one test and that test didn't improve, and it happened to be one of the ones that didn't improve, but actually all the other ones, if you had done them, would have improved, we've just focused on that one that's not doing it, and then it's a bit demoralising, and then it's thinking, do we carry on or not? So yeah, the more little tests you can do, it really does make a difference in motivating you. And also you can then look at the things you're doing in the gym. How easy do they feel? Is your weight going up? And that's again another test of strength, so that's another one you can add in there as well. But I think we've covered that enough there. Just thought I'd quickly mention for anyone who's watching who wasn't aware, I do have an ebook that's completely free to download that will help you build your first 12-week strengthening program. So it'll take you from the point of never doing any sort of strengthening work before, guide you through the theory you need to build strength, what the exercises might look like, how we adapt and modify the exercises around your ability level right now, and then how you progress that moving forward. So if that's of interest, you can just go to nevertoiltolift.com/start here, or start-here, and that link is in the description. It's also available as a paperback on Amazon if you don't like the idea of reading off a screen. So just search Never Toil to Lift on Amazon and you'll find that there. Remember, if you are watching this live and you have any questions, please do use this opportunity now. I've got one more prepared question that we'll go through, so you've got about sort of probably 4 or 5 minutes to ask that question if you've got one you're thinking about. And also, if you're watching this as a recording and you've got a question, then again, do use the comments and I will come back to them in the following week. But the last question I had was from someone who's, again, on the online course that I do, Stronger for Life. We have a weekly group Zoom call. Um, and she just mentioned the fact that she had a bit of a sort of slight pull in her shoulder, nothing significant, but she wasn't sure what she should do with regards to the gym. Should she just push through as normal? Should she take a day off and rest? Should she um, just go but do something slightly less than she's currently doing? And again, if it's just a bit of an ache, what I said to her is that it's probably worth going and just doing a light version, because generally if when you're starting to push the muscles a bit more, sometimes the best way of warming up is to do a set of the exercise you're about to do, but at a lower weight, so maybe half of what you normally do, to kind of get the muscles ready for the heavier weights you're about to lift. And then if that feels okay, then it means we can do more. But if it's a new ache that's only a couple of days old, and this could be any, I've put shoulder here because that's what she asked me about, but if it's in the knee, if it's the back, and this is something that you experience over the next few weeks of doing exercises, you kind of find that one day you've come up with a bit of an ache, then I would suggest don't go to push to fatigue on the exercise that you feel that it might aggravate it. So there's certain exercises like back, if you're doing deadlift, you might be more prone to feeling it than if you're doing a shoulder press. You're probably not going to feel it as much. With this person with the shoulder, it was more the pulling actions, it's more the back of the shoulder, so anything where she's pulling in or doing a bent over row or something similar like that, for her that's the thing that made her feel nervous. It could make it worse. And if for those exercises, I wouldn't worry about pushing to fatigue. I would just go for using the exercise and doing maybe half to 75% of the usual weight, and just be pleased you're in there, get it used to doing something, because often doing a little bit actually helps to improve it. And that would just avoid flaring it up and then having to take a week or two off the gym completely. And often, most times, these small little niggles do last a day or two, or if you wake up and you've got a sore neck, within a couple of days to a week, you've probably found it's back to normal. So whatever we can do in the meantime, just kind of keep things ticking over, then we can push on again after that. But yeah, don't feel we have to put the pressure on ourselves to push to fatigue every time and do a bit better than we did the week before. Particularly if we're starting strength training as an older adult, we do need to listen to our body and adapt where we need to. And sometimes it is 3 or 4 steps forward, 1 step back, 3 or 4 more, 4 steps forwards, 1 step back. And then we just listen to your body, and don't feel like you're failing if you go in for a session and have to ease back a little bit. You're just preparing yourself to then do it again. And actually she messaged me, and she's worked out since, and she said she did about 60% of the weight she normally did, and actually it's really nice to feel like she'd worked out, did the exercises, but she used a weight that previously would have been really challenging, and actually she found it now was really easy, and she added some repetitions on, and she did about 12 to 14 repetitions, and she felt like she could have done a lot more, and she wasn't too pushing to fatigue, whereas before that weight would have been really challenging. And it just opened her eyes up to how much she's actually improved in the space of just 4 or 5 weeks. Good. And then Kim has just asked me a question here. So Kim said, is it best to do a full squat right down to the floor, or just so that your legs are at right angle? So this very much depends on where you're currently at, and if you have any knee problems or anything along those lines. So basically, the lower into a squat you go, the more stress that is placed upon your knees, particularly as you combine that lower angle with higher level of weight as well. So we used to say that there was, at least I used to have this kind of thought process of, there's good and bad exercises, because a high stress movement for the knee must be bad for the knee. And actually there is no such thing as a good or bad exercise. It's some positions or exercises you do are higher stress for the knee, and some are lower stress for the knee. And at this point in time, can your knees tolerate the demands of what you're asking it to do? And if they can't tolerate it and the knees flare up as a reaction of doing that, then you then want to try and reduce the depth of the squat. Or you could go keep the depth the same but reduce the weight, but we want the total stress to bring you back under a threshold where you feel comfortable, and then we can kind of nudge it up and find that the knee starts to learn to tolerate more. So if you were to do a full squat right to the floor and you find that something isn't happy, whether it's the knees, sometimes it can actually be the hip position you're in, and you find that it just doesn't, it's something's not happy and it flares up, then I would just go down to something where your legs are, or your thighs are parallel with the floor. But even that might be too much, and for some people I get them doing this to a box where they're just going down to kind of somewhere between a 45 to 50 degree angle, and then you can load that heavy, build the strength in that lower range, and then you can take the weight down again and try and bring it down, and then eventually you find that the depth just improves as your strength improves. But for the moment, in what is the best to do, some people never work right to the floor, they always work to that right angle. If you can get used to getting down into a real deep squat, it's only of a benefit. The more range of motion you've got and the more range of motion you have available to you to push against resistance, the more robust and resilient your body is. But if it's just not liking it every time you're doing it and it's causing a reaction, then you have to sort of stop other things that keep you active. Then I wouldn't worry about getting right to the last bit. I would just focus on doing some form of squat to build the strength for the muscles that support the knee. Does that help, Kim, or is there any pain or discomfort that you experience in the knee? Feel free to elaborate if you want to here, or you can send me an email. And while you're doing that, for anyone else who isn't happy using the comments or the chat here to send me questions, but want to ask a question anonymously, or where I can then answer it but not use your name in there, you can send me an email. So it's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. So that's chris@nevertooldtolift.com. Then again, whilst I'm just waiting there to see if Kim's got any follow-up from there, let's just hide that. The other thing I've mentioned a few times is the online course. If that does sound good to you, then it's exactly the same content that's in the ebook. So if you're someone that can do it through the ebook or even through the book, then all the content is there. But if you're someone who enjoys watching the film rather than reading the book, and you're much more of a visual person, then the course is another option. It's going to guide you through building your program and choosing your exercises, but you also get access to me via these weekly group Zoom calls, which helps with accountability, but also building a bit of community amongst each other. So you might find that that's there. So that's nevertooldtolift.com/course. And again, the link should be, well, it might not actually be in the description, but if you go to nevertooldtolift.com/course, you'll find all the information there. And then I've just had a message from Sharon, just quickly scan through that. So I'll bring it up on screen here. But so Sharon says, I've been lifting weight on and off for around 10 years, more consistently for the last 4 years. I used to do different exercises in each session previously, but now I've been doing program for a while. When I do 8 to 12 week program, I always get a fear of missing out. Is there a number of different approaches to doing each exercise, but only a limited number being incorporated in each session program? For example, if I don't do a sumo squat for 8 to 12 weeks, I'm doing other types of squat. I also can't incorporate heel raises in the program. Does this matter? So yeah, thanks Sharon for this. And anyone who's listened to me for a while, you'll know that I tend to incorporate these more. I tend to go 12-week programs or quarterly cycles of exercises. So you kind of pick a routine of exercises that you do, and then you just do those for 12 weeks, and you progress and try and get the weight up, try and reduce repetitions to fade it down until you get to that 12-week mark, and then you just start again, picking your whole new load of exercises, start again at the 15 repetition max, and then over 12 weeks try and get it down to 5 repetitions. That tends to be far more effective than picking and choosing for one session and then pick and choose in a whole new load of exercise for another session, and then you just keep doing that every session, because you don't get the consistency enough to actually build and sort of progress in that time. Like you said, that does come with a cost of missing certain exercises in that 12-week period, but because you've been working with similar muscle groups, you're still getting the benefits. So if you're doing, say, not doing a sumo squat, but you've done another type of squat, you'll still get some increased strength that will carry over into the sumo squat. So when you come back to sumo squats, you'll find that you can build that. In terms of things like more isolated exercises like the heel raises that aren't often in the kind of big compound lifts, there's nothing to stop you adding more exercises in, but it then obviously depends on the amount of time you've got available to you. Because you could add in, depending on how many sessions per week you go, you could add in an additional session, and that's where people start to do more sessions in the week, and they then start to split it more into that leg day, push day, pull day, so that you can kind of come back in, because you haven't got enough days rest in there. If you're doing full body every day, if you do a leg day and then you're not doing the legs on the push and the pull day, by the time you get back to the leg day, your legs had enough recovery. And because you're just doing legs and you're now not doing upper body, where you would have been doing upper body exercises, you can then fill that with other exercises that you might feel like you're missing out on, like the heel raises, or you could do knee extensions or hamstring curls, for example, anything like that. So yeah, for me, I don't think it matters too much. I think if there's anything you feel you are missing out on and you're craving, then when you come to reprogram your exercise in 8 to 12 weeks time, that's where I'd incorporate it back in again. And again, if you're doing, some people do the same workout. If they work out twice a week, they do the same workout twice a week for the 12 weeks, but you could have 2 alternating workouts or 3 alternating workouts, and that way again you can fit more exercises in. As long as you're doing them that same workout once a week for 12 weeks, that's fine, and then the second one once a week for 12 weeks. Again, that help builds a consistency there. But yeah, hopefully that helps and answers your question there. Kim's just got back and said no problems as such. Also says that's great. I do a workout with lots of squats, a little weight when doing my other workout with 8 reps and go up and weight and full squat. So yeah, I think that makes sense. Good. So I think we'll leave that here for today. Again, if you are watching the recording, then please do use the comments and let me know. If you have found any value, again, please do just click the thumbs up button, and that's something I'd really appreciate. And if you're not already subscribed to Never Told to Lift, then please do click the subscribe button. But for now, I hope you have a good week, and I will see you at 12 o'clock next Wednesday, and we'll go from there. Thanks.